In 2023, Eiichiro Oda's lifelong series, One Piece, officially became not just the highest-selling manga of all time, but it dethroned the Harry Potter books with over 500 million volumes worldwide, becoming the best-selling fictional story series in recorded human history. That is freaking insane. So insane that it is almost impossible for me to wrap my head around it. It doesn't help that despite running for 25 years now, 2023 was one of, if not the biggest year for One Piece ever. With one of the most hyped up anime moments of all time, the Gear 5 anime debut, the release of the long-awaited Netflix live-action adaptation, a brand new AAA video game, and last but not least, the announcement of The One Piece, an anime remake by Studio WIT. There was so much this past year that I decided it was best to make it an annual tradition, where we take a step back to assess the past so we can look towards the future of One Piece in 2024 and onwards. Note to anime only fans, the last segment of this video will be discussing things that happened in the manga during 2023, so if you want to stay spoiler free, I will be giving plenty of warnings before that happens. Without further ado, let's find
The One Piece! The One Piece is real!
From the literal second that we got the long-awaited arrival of Gear 5 in the manga, the question that was on every single person's lips was, Gear 5 anime when? Every single time there's a One Piece related thing, at least 10 people magically appeared to comment Gear 5 anime when, but at least helped get the ball rolling, because every second the clock ticked closer to the fated Gear 5 episode, the hype only continued to spread, and it spread far, to the point where even people who didn't care about One Piece were excited. To be fair, they had every right to be. Right before the Wano arc started, Toei decided that they didn't want their biggest moneymaker to look like crap anymore, so they stepped up their game and pulled in some of the biggest talent in the industry. I think that the results speak for themselves, because what the animators were able to produce week to week during Wano was mind-blowing. While I stopped watching the anime a long time ago for reasons I'll get into later, I would peep in from time to time, just to see what the team was cooking up, and they never once disappointed. So we knew that Gear 5 was in safe hands as long as we waited patiently, they would deliver something glorious. And by the time One Piece episode 1071 released, I couldn't watch it at first because the Crunchyroll servers are about as functional as a papier-mâché bomb shelter. But when I finally could, I was ecstatic. Chills went down my spine as soon as I heard the drums of liberation start pounding in the background while Luffy bounced around Onigashima like the lovable idiot that he is. The real main course was when Luffy and Kaido went blow to blow. Of course this all looked magnificent, and I love that the team made it look even goofier than in the manga. But that was just the first episode, as Gear 5 was spread across 1071 through 1076, as there was a lot of non-Gear 5 stuff to adapt as well. I was honestly a little worried that Toei would decrease the animation budget steadily as the viewership inevitably waned off, but they didn't. It was maintained right up until the end. In fact, the real standout was episode 1074, which is now a genuine contender for the best looking One Piece episode, period. The anime continues to surpass itself, even when it seems like it can't anymore, breaking past the limits that a weekly schedule was thought to provide. There's no doubt that the same level of quality will be carried into the Egghead Island arc, though I'm curious as to how the team will go about it. Wano presented a fresh new look for One Piece, not just in terms of animation, but in terms of art style, throwing out the old one that had been used since the start of the series, though it seems that the team is returning to a much more modern version of the classic style, which I think is a great change because the Wano style would not fit Egghead Island, though this could present some issues as the animation team has been drawing with the Wano style for over 4 years now. Some people are worried that an instant change to a brand new art direction could leave some things lost in translation, but I don't think we have anything to worry about, as last year's film Red used a very similar art style to the upcoming one and it looked amazing. I can't wait to see what they have in store for us going forward, as I'm sure it will be great. As I mentioned earlier, I stopped watching the One Piece anime a long time ago. If I remember correctly, it was around the late 100s during Skypiea when I finally jumped ship to the manga, because it felt like nothing was happening in the anime. Though that was something that was by design. When an anime is weekly, that means that there is a new episode every single week, different from seasonal anime that only airs one season at a time. Back in the day, weekly anime was all the rage, with shows like Dragon Ball, Naruto, Bleach, and One Piece being the biggest ones. But they all had one common problem, that being that the manga they were directly adapting was still being serialized. Basically think of it as an anime train, chugging along a manga track that is still actively being built. If the manga starts to falter from its regular release schedule, which it inevitably will, then that anime train gets dangerously close to the end of the track. The solution for this is to slow that train down by making the pacing of the series as sluggish as possible. This means every episode has 5 minutes of recap, a 2-minute opening, lots and lots of flashbacks, unnecessary filler dialogue, slow drawn out action, 2-minute ending, and a 2-minute trailer for the next episode. In the end, probably only 12 minutes of the 22-minute episode is actually worth watching. This is fine if you're 8 years old because you don't know what good pacing is. Your barely developed brain just wants to see your favorite pirate crew go on crazy adventures. The problem now, though, is that the anime has been able to reach a much wider and much older demographic. A demographic that wants to feel like their free time is being respected because they don't have a lot of it. That's why 1,000 episodes of snail speed storytelling isn't exactly a selling point to newcomers. This issue is only going to get worse and worse as the years go on, with Wano being the closest the series has ever come to catching up with the manga. Now Toei has to resort to adapting half a chapter per episode, which sucks, since I want to watch the anime weekly as the animation is so good now. I just can't get over the god-awful pacing. That's why a lot of people like myself switch to the manga early on, since the pacing is infinitely better and you're getting the source material in its rawest form. I guess not rawest, because the only way to read One Piece legally in English is to read the Viz Media translation. Now don't get me wrong, I like Viz. They are doing God's work by having their subscription price as low as it is. But you do have to criticize their translations of early One Piece, because it's filled to the brim with yar and ai matey, cringy pirate talk that can throw a lot of people off. Basically, the moral of the story is that there isn't any perfect way to get into or recommend One Piece to your friends nowadays, both anime and manga wise. But we might just have the perfect remedy for that. In December of 2023, Netflix announced that they had partnered with Shueisha to produce what they're calling The One Piece. Studio WIT, the people behind Ranking of Kings, Spike's Family, Vinland Saga, and Attack on Titan, will be reanimating the series from Chapter 1, starting over with a blank slate. I personally could not be happier, as this is the best possible fix for the pacing, since Studio WIT won't have to worry about catching up to the manga. They can just go wild with the animation. It also seems that Eiichiro Oda will be heavily involved in the production, meaning that this could very well be the ultimate way to experience One Piece, even surpassing the manga. My theory is that they will go the route of the JoJo's Bizarre Adventure anime, which was created almost 30 years after the JoJo's manga started. David Productions smartly changed certain elements when adapting the manga that didn't age super well, while adding new stuff such as foreshadowing or expanding on certain characters. Imagine this but for One Piece with Oda at the forefront, making the changes he wants now that he has much more experience as a writer. He could also add a ton more foreshadowing to later events in the series, which we all know Oda excels at. Though I do have my fair share of worries for the remake. The first being that Netflix is producing it, a company who is infamous for burying anime because of their out-of-touch greediness. The perfect example of this also just happens to be JoJo's. JoJo's was on top of the world in 2019 during the airing of its 5th part, Golden Wind. So with berry signs in their eyes, Netflix bought the exclusive rights to have Part 6 Stone Ocean on their platform. But the executives at the top didn't want to have it air week to week for some reason. So they decided to release the 38-episode season as 3 different 12-episode batches. The first batch released in December of 2021 and everyone loved it. But the problem was that the second batch didn't release until almost a year later in September of 2022. This time, nobody watched the second batch because nobody knew that it was coming out. By the time that the final batch released, the series was nominated for the award of Most Underrated Anime of the Year. Just to hammer home the point, the opening for the first batch, which currently sits at 30 million views on YouTube, while the opening for the final batch has less than a quarter of that with 1.5 million. Netflix somehow managed to make JoJo's, one of the biggest series in the world, a financial flop, all because of their pride got the better of them. A lot of people, myself included, are worried this is the course Netflix will take with The One Piece, which would defeat the entire point of this being the best way for people to get into the series. Nobody can get into the series if nobody is going to watch it. My other concern is the mention of cutting-edge visual technology being utilized, which could be code for AI. AI anime is something that is sadly inevitable. Studio WIT themselves have begun to dabble with it by generating backgrounds for a recent OVA. This sucks because AI sucks. There's no passion, no creativity, no actual art involved other than stolen art in the making of AI. The legend himself, Tetsuo Hara, the mangaka behind Fist of the North Star, put it best himself. What AI cannot do is be prepared to die. You have to suffer, 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 and think it through. Then, when you think, this is really dying, then there comes a point where you say, this is what I wanted. This is what it means to have an actual soul. I want to please all the readers with a picture that has actual soul in it. For that reason, I put my life on the line, abandoning my own greed and killing myself. No matter how painful it is, I will do it. That's all I can do. Creating art is putting your blood, sweat, and tears into something so you can be genuinely proud to call it your own. Then you do it all again, but you push yourself farther because that is all you can do, to strive to be better. This is also one of the core themes of One Piece, the idea of fighting so hard for your dreams to the point where it will kill you, but never giving up because you know that one day you'll be able to look back at what you achieved with a smile. There is a much longer, much more thought out discussion on the impact AI will have on our culture, but that's for another video. But let me say this, if the One Piece remake ends up being some AI Frankenstein pretending to be a series I hold so dear to my heart, rest assured I will not be acknowledging or talking about it ever, because it does not deserve my time, nor does it deserve yours. Sorry to end the last segment on such a grim note, but hopefully discussing the live-action One Piece will cheer you up. This series had the impossible task of adapting the most anime-like anime ever to a Hollywood set, an impossible task that had never been successfully accomplished until now. The One Piece live action was phenomenal in every sense of the word, but not without its drawbacks. Though I won't be discussing those here. If you want to hear my thoughts on the live action, I already made an extensive review in another video, so go check that out. Today I instead want to discuss the impact that the live action has had on One Piece as a whole. This past year saw a massive explosion in terms of popularity for the series, with the live action at the forefront. In fact, I would go as far as to say that nothing has propelled One Piece to be more popular here in the West than the live action. Everybody was watching it, and I mean everybody, with it sitting in first place of Netflix's top 10 TV shows for over 3 weeks. I have so many stories of friends and family members who had never heard of anime before, just stumbling upon the live action and they ended up loving it. Even regular anime fans who had always seen One Piece's length as off-putting ended up liking the live action, so they tried the main series and ended up falling in love with it as well. The team behind the live action should be super proud of what they were able to accomplish, because I know that Eiichiro Oda is. Despite his series being the best-selling of all time, Oda has always been jealous of his good friend, Masashi Kishimoto's popularity overseas with Naruto. So Oda saw the live action as his final chance to make One Piece just as popular. While only time will tell if his wish will come true, things seem to be on the right track. All eyes are on season 2 of the live action, which will take a little bit of time to come out. My bets are on a late 2025 release. Though as they move past East Blue and into Alabasta, things start getting a little bit tricky. The reindeer in the room being how they're going to handle Tony Chopper. The simplest answer would be to use CGI, but the team has made a commitment to practical effects, which is something I applaud them for, but it makes things really tricky. Whatever workaround they find, it will be interesting to see nonetheless. I wish them luck and eagerly await for the future. One Piece Odyssey is if somebody asked their friend one day, "Hey, wouldn't it be cool if there was a One Piece RPG with turn-based combat?" And that friend replied, yeah, I guess. Then that person went and made a One Piece RPG with turn-based combat, making no attempt to adapt the gameplay elements or make them One Piece related at all. I will admit I've never really jived with turn-based RPGs, having finished a grand total of 3 of them in my lifelong gaming career. The first was when I played the original Final Fantasy VII, but you don't play Final Fantasy for the combat, you play it for the story. So I used the in-game cheats to literally skip every single fight. My second time was when the Yakuza games switched to turn-based combat, which I ended up only playing because I love Yakuza. But again, you only really play those games for the story and fun side quests anyways. My third and most recent escapade was 2023's Game of the Year winner, Baldur's Gate 3. Which I really enjoyed because it actually made turn-based combat fun since you play Baldur's Gate for both the gameplay and the story. So having proven my track record as a veteran turn-based gamer, I completely forgot One Piece Odyssey came out this year. In fact, it got so close to the cutoff date, being released on January 10th of 2023, that I doubt anybody would have remembered either if I didn't put it in this video. So I quickly found where the game was cheapest, picking Xbox since PlayStation's return policy is almost non-existent, gave Phil Spencer $23 of my cold hard cash, downloaded the game, booted it up, played it for about 30 minutes, got bored, refunded the game, and here we are now. One Piece Odyssey sucks, but I don't really need to tell you that. Every review outlet across the board can tell you that it does. But who knows, I could be wrong and they could be wrong. If you finished One Piece Odyssey, let me know in the comments as to what your thoughts were on the game. I'm genuinely curious. I just hope that one day we get an actual good One Piece game that isn't just some nostalgic cash-in, but an actual love letter to the series made by developers passionate about One Piece. Personally, I would kill for a Legend of Zelda the Wind Waker style game or a fighting game by Arc System Works, the people behind BlazBlue Guilty Gear and the best anime game of all time, Dragon Ball FighterZ. But for now, I can only hope and dream. I saved this topic of the video for last because it's not one that I enjoy talking about, but one that I have to. That being the health of Eiichiro Oda. In the manga industry, it is sadly common for mangaka to frequently overwork themselves in order to meet harsh deadlines, so much so that they end up developing severe health problems that affect them for the rest of their lives. But they often don't realize it until it's too late, as in Japanese culture, you're expected to work until you drop dead. Anything less and you are deemed a societal failure. So the older and older these mangaka get, the more and more they push themselves to the point where their body can no longer physically handle all of that pressure. This can lead to tragic cases like with Yoshihiro Togashi, who is no longer able to sit for long periods of time due to chronic back pain, forcing him to put Hunter x Hunter on many hiatuses with multiple years between chapter releases. Recently, Yuki Tabata had to switch from releasing a chapter of Black Clover every week to one every 3 months, due to his schedule not compensating for his health or giving him time to take care of his sick wife and daughter. Manga artist Shibashi Hiroshi released a spreadsheet that illustrated his haunting daily schedule, which consists of him only being able to sleep 4 to 5 hours a day, since he spends every waking moment drawing manga, often having to skip meals because he's so busy. Once he finally finishes a new chapter, he can only afford 3 hours of free time for the entire week before immediately starting work on the next one. This is not okay. No human should be subject to this. Earlier when I talked about how a person should pour their blood, sweat, and tears into creating art, I meant creatively. You should always strive to push past your creative limit, never your physical limit. Unfortunately, this is also the case for Eiichiro Oda. For almost 25 years now, Oda only sleeps 3 hours a day. The longest breaks Oda has ever taken in his career are 3 different 1-month-long ones. The first was in between the time skip all the way back in 2010. The second was almost 10 years after that in 2022, near the end of Wano. But where things get concerning is the third break, which occurred just less than a year later in 2023. Though this time a reason was given, that being that Oda had to get eye surgery. I thought this was Shueisha finally trying to prioritize his health above the series, but that hope diminished when soon after Chapter 1098 released with incomplete drawings. The first time this has ever happened in the history of One Piece. This meant that Oda did not have enough time to properly finish the manga chapter, possibly because something might have happened or Shueisha didn't give him proper time to recover from the surgery. A lot of people will think that this is not a big deal, after all it's just one chapter. But to that I say, this is always how it starts. The aforementioned Yoshihiro Togashi and Yuki Tabata both had to regularly release unfinished chapters since they couldn't complete them in time because of their health. Still, they kept pushing themselves until their bodies inevitably snapped, leaving them with permanent health issues. But the sad thing is that Oda probably recognizes this and just thinks, well, since I'm so close to the finish line, I'll just worry about my health after the series ends. What I'm hoping is that Shueisha or Oda himself take responsibility and find a healthy schedule before something inevitably goes wrong. A world where Eiichiro Oda is no longer able to do what he loves, a world where he can't finish the thing he spent his entire life working on, is not a world that I even want to fathom. Look, I know that this probably won't reach Shueisha or any ears overseas for that matter, but the best way to combat these issues is to talk about them, not just sit back and pretend like they aren't happening. It's the least I can do for Oda, and I wish him the best going forward, because I do not know where my life would be without his work on One Piece, so thank you for listening. Warning, there will be spoilers ahead for the manga, so if you're an anime-only fan, I would highly recommend clicking out the video right about now. Alright? Alright. While the first chapter of One Piece published in 2023 was actually 1071, I thought it was best if we went back to 1061, the beginning of Egghead Island, since it's only 10 chapters extra and it helps paint a better picture. To finally have the Straw Hats depart from the nation of Wano after spending over 4 years there was strange, especially since we didn't actually know what our next destination was. The last time this happened was after Fishman Island all the way back in 2012. Though it's extremely fitting in a way, as that resulted in the Straw Hats stumbling upon Punk Hazard, Dr. Vegapunk's old laboratory, and 10 years later, the Straw Hats stumbled upon Egghead Island, Dr. Vegapunk's new laboratory. Since 2006, the name Vegapunk has been mentioned countless times throughout the series, and we've seen his effects on the One Piece world, but never actually the man himself until now. He ended up looking exactly what you would expect if Oda designed an old mad scientist character, a comedic cross between Albert Einstein and Isaac Newton. Vegapunk is the world's leading expert in pretty much every facet of science known to man, so he's naturally a very busy person. So busy in fact that he created 6 different clones of himself to help carry out his duties. Though these clones aren't just exact replicas, they were all the representation of 6 different personality traits: Shaka the Good, Lilith the Evil, Edison the Thinker, Pythagoras the Wise, Atlas the Violent, and York the Greedy. Together all 7 of them share the same brain, titling themselves Vegapunk. In the future they hope to one day be able to do the same for all of humanity, to give every human being a shared library of collective knowledge, merge everyone into a single brain. This honestly sounds a little bit too Evangelion-y for me not to be skeptical, and I'm not alone. Jinbei questions as to how Vegapunk would be able to sort opinion from fact. If everyone is dumping their ideology into one giant melting pot, how do you know what to believe? Vegapunk just kinda says, "Good question, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it." This is why I think Oda is using Vegapunk as commentary on irresponsible scientific advancements that will inevitably affect us in the future, like AI. Think John Hammond from Jurassic Park, a person who had humanity's best interest in mind when he genetically engineered dinosaurs back to life for the simple goal to make people smile. But Hammond got so swept up in his achievements, he never stopped to consider the harmful side effects that those achievements will inevitably bring. Vegapunk also has humanity's best interest in mind because he loves humanity and wants to see it prosper for centuries to come. To be fair, his reasoning is kind of sound, that if we spend too much time asking questions, we will never find any answers. Though I think it is wrong to put these questions on the back burner, because before we know it, Vegapunk could leave humanity in ruin with one step too far, regretting his life's work, sort of like in an Oppenheimer effect. While I could just be reading too far into this, I think that Oda isn't just using Vegapunk for social commentary. I think he could be giving us a hint to solving one of One Piece's greatest mysteries. In this arc, we have learned a great deal about the Void Century, a span of 100 years in which all historical records describing what happened during this period of time were destroyed by the world government, researching the Void Century being a crime punishable by death, though we have gotten little hints over the years as to what may have transpired in this gap of time. The biggest revelation finally came during Egghead Island, when it was revealed that in ancient times, an extremely technologically advanced nation once existed, potentially ruling the world as no other countries had the strength to oppose them. This nation's name was currently lost to time, but most refer to it as the Great Kingdom. It is said that during the Void Century, 20 other nations rose up and defeated the Great Kingdom, forming the world government. The reason that any record or research of the Void Century is prohibited is to prevent the ideologies of the Great Kingdom from resurfacing. I kept wondering to myself, what ideologies could be so bad that the world government is willing to go to such great lengths to keep a mystery? Well, my personal theory is that long ago, the Great Kingdom actually had humanity's best interests in mind by attempting to ensure a prosperous future for mankind. So they tried to transcend humanity to its ultimate form, possibly through genetic modification. Though whatever solution they came up with was ultimately flawed. The Great Kingdom became so blinded by their own achievement that they couldn't recognize its faults, planning to force it on the rest of the world against its will. Some nations responded like Wano did, by erecting massive walls to keep out a quote, great enemy. But 20 nations decided to stand up and fight, banding together to go to war against the Great Kingdom. Though to prevent something like this from happening again, they destroyed all records and forbade any research of the Great Kingdom, Now, look, I know I don't really have any evidence to back my theory up, but I do have something. One of the core themes that One Piece is built on. The theme that history will inevitably repeat itself if we do not look back on and learn from it. Since the world government has unintentionally become a modern-day version of the Great Kingdom. Think about it, they are essentially their own entity separate from all other nations despite ruling over them. And even though they are supposed to be an organization with no king, we can very clearly see that they have one. The world government may have started out with the best of intentions, but has become so blindly faithful to its outdated ideals that it will regularly commit mass genocide without a second thought. Now, the world government is having Vegapunk develop the Seraphim, which he refers to as the ultimate humans, clones of the 7 warlords that have been genetically modified to be brainless puppets of mass destruction. By the end of One Piece, I expect that the truth of the Void Century will all be uncovered and the world government will be disbanded, though this time things will be different. Instead of pretending that nothing happened and getting rid of any mention of the world government, humanity will try to properly learn from its mistakes so it can advance in a healthy way. Rereading Egghead Island reminded me just how much fun One Piece theory crafting can be. When you're reading week to week, it's pretty easy to forget important little details, especially when you're in an arc as exposition heavy as Egghead Island is. I realized that what Oda does is he slowly gives us pieces of a puzzle. We don't know what that puzzle will look like in the end. The best we can do is figure out how it all fits together with what little we have. That's why Oda is able to introduce stuff like clones into One Piece, which is always dangerous for a story to do, since clones can make things extremely confusing if implemented incorrectly. But you don't have to worry about this happening in One Piece, because they still operate within the confines of that neatly crafted puzzle. This changed my entire perspective on Egghead Island as a whole, because reading it week to week, I found the arc to be kind of boring. The constant info dumps just felt more like interruptions of the actual storytelling, but being able to sit down and see this arc with a bird's eye view paints a much clearer picture in my head. So now I can enjoy all of the new information as well as the amazing action, because there were some great fights this year. In 2023, we saw 2 major characters who have canonically never battled before finally get their hands dirty. The first being Shanks, completely obliterating Eustace Kid's crew with just one swing from his sword. The second being Monkey D. Garp, sailing a ship through the air, landing it smack dab in the middle of Pirate Island, before calling out a genuine contender for the coolest attack name in all of One Piece, Galaxy Impact. Then Kobe immediately followed up with a genuine contender for the worst attack name in all of One Piece, Honesty Impact, which did actually look pretty cool. We learned that Aokiji used to be Garp's apprentice before he became a Marine Admiral, but now he has joined the Blackbeard Pirates for some strange reason. What makes it tragic is that Garp probably feels heartbroken, since almost 4 different people that he loved like sons have betrayed him now. In the end, Garp is captured by Blackbeard with his future uncertain. There were 2 great Straw Hat fights this year as well, the first being the rematch between Luffy and the now awakened Rob Lucci, but the real standout was Luffy versus Kizaru, with Oda using some really cool paneling to show the capabilities of the Glint Glint fruit. There was a lot more things that happened in 2023, such as the clarification on what sword actually is, the tease of the man with a burn scar, a revelation regarding the possible identity of King Emu, the tragic murder of King Cobra, and the appearance of a world noble. All really cool things, but the highlight of this year for me was the Kuma flashback. I had almost forgotten how good Oda is at actual storytelling, with this flashback being one of the most genuinely heartbreaking scenes the series has ever put me through, which is saying a lot. Overall, this year was a great year for One Piece in terms of popularity, but not a lot happened in the manga other than setup for the eventual Elbaf arc, which Oda stated will start this year. I can't wait to see what 2024 will be like. I'll see you guys again for this in 2025. Until next time, have a good one.